If your bills feel like they are spiraling out of control, here is a simple 3-step formula that will help you cut those bills fast.
If you're like most people, you've got bills that are climbing higher and higher, seemingly out of control, but there is certainly a way to deal with it. Hi, if you don't know us, I'm Larry.
I'm Hope.
We're from Under the Median, where practical frugality meets real life.
And we see this a lot. We have people that contact us and say, here's the situation I'm in. And universally, the thing that we see is that they understand bills are climbing. Everybody does. But what they don't have is a really solid plan for figuring out how they're going to deal with the situation and make sure that we're keeping those bills under control. And that's what this video is all about. We have used this same 3-step formula countless times in the past 3 decades to get our bills under control and to figure out how we're going to cut them back. It works. It's flexible, it's repeatable.
One of the fallacies, I think, about bill paying is that we think that our bills are fixed and they're out of our control. Understanding that you're in control gives you the power to do something about it.
Step number 1, know exactly what you're spending. Stop guessing.
Yeah.
You should know exactly what you are spending in the category that you are trying to lower. But not only that, you need to know how that money is allocated. So here's an example. We just finished a 5-month challenge, personal challenge to lower our utility bills. We got a notice. They were raising the supply rate by 50%. They said expect bills that are 18 to 22% higher. That's on average in the middle of summer. And we said, yeah, we don't think so. We feel like we can control the bill by controlling the amount of electricity that we use. So we set very, very specific goals. We started out with that. But the one thing that we did know is exactly how much energy we had been using in the past and how much energy we were using now. So we went back and we got that information. Data is your friend.
Yes.
So you need to know not only what the total bill is, but you need to know how that's broken down. How much of that is just a fee for being a customer? How much of that is a fee for what you're using? How much of that is taxes? Everything broken down as much as you can as far as that bill is concerned. Because what that does is it gives you the power to understand how much of that bill do you really have control over.
Right.
And those areas that you have control over, that's what you're going to hone in on.
It's really easy to guess what your bill is and guess way too low.
Yep.
And then you think you're failing. Oh, the bill's so much higher than I expected it to be. That's why once you lay your hands on the exact data, then you'll have a plan to know what to do to get it changed.
The other thing you should do too is not just look at 1 month worth of information.
Yeah.
We say at least a quarter, 3 months of information. That's what you need to make a sound decision on how much you're really spending over time and how much you're going to try to cut that back.
Yeah, 3 months gives you a good pattern to know exactly how much you're using each item.
Now, before we move on, we should say that we put all of this information for these 3 steps into a workbook for you. So if you want some step-by-step instructions, worksheets, reflection sheets that will help you hone in on the specific bill that you're trying to lower and make sure that you're using the process over and over again that has helped us to lower bills consistently, then you can grab your copy of the PI workbook, and we're going to make sure that there's a link to it in the video description.
Remember, PI stands for Plan, Implement, and Evaluate. So it's an overall way to look at what you're doing.
So we just taught you step 1, which was to know exactly what you're spending every month on that specific bill and how you're spending that money. Now that's the planning. Now we're going to move on to the implementing. How are you specifically going to lower that bill? You can't just say, this is the bill, this is what it is. You have to have a game plan in place that's going to help you to lower the bill.
Step number 2 is understand how your habits affect your bill. And this has to do with things that you do every month that either lower your bill or raise your bill. Now with your utility bill, how you leave your lights on in your house will affect the amount that bill's going to be. whether you use extra things that require a lot more wattage for cooking. Like we have an oven that uses a lot of energy. It's built into the house. It's a 220 oven. That uses a lot of energy. We decided to use some other things that use much less energy in order to save money. And that's how we implemented that planning stage that we started with before this.
Now, Larry just said something really important, and that is once you know how you're spending your dollars for that specific bill, what are your alternatives? What else can you do? He gave the example of our wall oven.
Yeah.
There are other appliances that we generally use instead of that wall oven because it's so incredibly expensive to turn the thing on. You can literally see our rate of consumption spike 3 times higher than what we normally use. So we began to do research, and some of this has to do with figuring out what the alternatives are, because that is the problem. People begin to look at bills and feel like this is what I'm paying. I'm just stuck paying whatever I'm paying. This process helps you to figure out how to get unstuck by figuring out alternatives.
Step 3, make the change and stick with it. Persistence is very important. I think that's a real key in getting ahead of higher bills.
You need to be willing to stay with newly formed habits for 30 days. So you're going to plan what you're going to do, the exact steps you're willing to take to lower the bill. You're going to implement it for at least 30 days. You're going to find a way to show what you did for 30 days. And then at the end of 30 days, that's when you're going to evaluate it. You stuck with it. You're going to look at hard data. And I know we keep saying this, but anytime you can get numbers down on paper that are backed up by facts, that is what helps you to figure out what your next move is, because numbers don't lie. Not only that, the minute you see numbers, if your goal is to drop your $1,500 a month grocery bill to say $1,200 or $1,000 a month, and if on paper you have still spent $1,475 at the end of those 30 days, you didn't implement the habits, or what you decided to do did not work as well as you expected it to work. So sometimes those numbers will give us data we're not super happy with. This has happened to us like, I don't know, a million kajillion times in the past 30 years, at least that many. That is a real number.
That's a very accurate number.
and we've not always been super happy with it, but it doesn't lie. It is what it is. And it forces us to go back to the drawing board and look again at what the habits were. Maybe we had good intentions, but we had really lousy follow through. And it is okay to admit that to yourself and say, all right, I'm going to give it another 30 days. This time I'm really going to stick with it. Because if you want to see change, you must be persistent and consistent.
And let me say this too. Don't let a failure for 1 month discourage you. Get back on track and say, okay, we failed. It's good that we know that. We can still succeed in the long run. Let's go back and reevaluate everything we did and see where we can really make the change that will matter.
And remember, this process is not only repeatable, it works for every single bill that we have ever tried it on, and we have used it over and over and over again. If you're ready for some step-by-step instructions on how specifically to use the plan, implement, evaluate, the PI method, we did a video on it and we walked you through it. It's right over there.